Give me the tea. What's the drama? What's happening in your life? I want to know.
Story time of when I got stalked. This is a really long story, so I might have to do multiple parts. So I used to work at Forever 21, and if you've ever worked there, you know it's a lot of fun. Like, you get to dress cute, hang out with cool people, and they don't even really care about customer service, to be honest. So everybody who worked there was pretty much between the ages of like 18 and 21, except for one guy who we're gonna call Greg. He was like 35, but we didn't know that he was 35. We thought he was like in his early 20s. Hang out all the time. Like, me and one of my besties at the time used to buy outfits and like go out right after work. So Greg will always text me and like hit me up and ask me to hang out, and I just never did. He was really nice, but my intuition told me something was a little bit off about him, but I never really knew what. He also was a singer, and he used to invite me to his open mic nights. But one of my biggest icks is people who sing seriously but cannot sing, and I just was not going to put myself through that. One random day, I told Greg he could go on his 30-minute break. So he left, and then he just never came back. And then he like ghosted us for like 2 days and did not answer our texts or calls or anything. So we're thinking he's never coming back. He then shows up a few days later for his shift like nothing happened. So me and another manager, who we'll call Matt, pull him to the side, and me and Matt are just like, what's going on? He ended up telling us that his sister was really sick and he had to go take care of her. So we're like, okay, like in the future, just communicate it with us and, you know, we'll figure something out. But like, this is your final strike. So the next day on Saturday, Matt comes in with the opening team and Greg is there. And he's like, hey, Greg, you actually closed with Lauren tonight. And Greg is like, oh, I got my schedule mixed up. I'm sorry. Can I just stay? And Matt is like, actually, no, Lauren needs a closer and I have enough openers. So he's like, okay, well, I'll just sit back here and wait until my shift. Mind you, it's 9 a.m. His shift doesn't start till 3. So Matt's like, whatever. So around 12 o'clock, Matt is like, hey, we have a couple extra hours. If you want to clock in early, you still have to stay till close, but you can at least clock in now. So Greg is like, okay, cool. I'm going to go grab some food and I'll be back. So 2 o'clock comes around when it's time for me to come in, and Matt fills me in on the situation, and he's like, yeah, Greg never came back. So if he doesn't come back by his shift time at 3, he's done, and we'll have to have a talk with him on Monday. 5 o'clock rolls around, Matt leaves for the day, and like soon after that, Greg calls the store and asks me what his schedule is. So I'm like, hey, are you not coming in for your shift? And he's like, just tell me my schedule. And I'm like, unfortunately, like, we'll have to have a talk on Monday, but you're not on the schedule next week. Which was true, because he had ghosted us, so he actually was not on the schedule for the next week. So he's like, Lauren, stop playing around, like, tell me my schedule. And I'm like, you're literally not on the schedule, we'll call you on Monday. And he starts like hysterically laughing. So as a reminder, he's really nice. So up until this point, I have no reason to think of him any type of way but as a nice person. He's like, okay, you're gonna regret that. And then we get off the phone, and I'm like, boy, whatever. So maybe like an hour later, I'm at the register bringing somebody up, and the windows at Forever 21 were grids, and I feel something like staring at me. So I look up, Greg is looking at me through one of the like window grids, like that. So I'm like, oh my God, y'all, look. And so everybody turns and looks. He runs off and nobody sees him. And they're like, Lauren, like, stop playing, like, it's not funny. And I'm like, oh my God, okay, whatever. So maybe like another 30 minutes passes. I feel it again. I feel someone staring at me. So I look up out the corner of my eye. I see him staring in. So I'm like, okay. So without looking up, I tell everybody to look at the same time. So everybody looks. They see him. So we all just start like screaming, and we're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So now we're a little freaked out, but it's just whatever. A little bit after that, I have to go to the bathroom. The bathroom is in the back of the store. And as I'm walking back there, I hear like footsteps running towards me. And then I hear one person scream, and then I hear another girl scream my best friend's name. And I turn around, and it's literally my best friend like intercepting Greg from like running at me towards the back. Now I'm scared, of course. So we're just like, what is going on? This is crazy. So we're getting closer to closing time. Greg ends up calling the store again, and he's like, Lauren, I'm gonna be waiting for you, like, when you get off of work to talk to you. And I'm like, there's nothing for us to talk about. Like, we'll talk to you on Monday. And he's like, no, I'll be waiting for you. It's like a few minutes till it's time to close. So I'm like, everybody lock all the doors. Any customers that are still in the store, we'll just let them out. There was like a little corner of our Forever 21, like, someone could easily hide in that corner. So I told one associate to go lock those doors. For whatever reason, she didn't know how to lock the doors. So we realized that the doors were still open, and we walk over there, and somebody was like, what if he's hiding over there? Right when she said that, he took off running, y'all. Okay, come back for part 2. Story time of when I got stalked, part 2. So when I left off, Greg was running out of the store. We're literally screaming. I'm hysterically crying. I call 911. We lock the doors, and I'm like, yes, like, a former employee is like being weird and crazy, whatever the case may be. I forgot to mention too, I had called mall security when he tried to follow me to the back, but mall security was like old. They was all like in their 70s. They couldn't do nothing. So anyways, called the police, and when you call the police at the mall, they automatically like call mall security. So mall security came to the door. I told them the situation. They're like, oh, like, what are we gonna do? And I'm like, what are you asking me for? What are you gonna do? So whatever, closing the store, you see him, he is walking back and forth in front of the doors, super slow, looking in like we're in a freaking horror movie. So I call 911 again. This time they actually get there within a couple minutes. So I talk to the police. I tell them what happened. They're like, yeah, we're gonna talk to him. We're gonna trespass him from the store. He's not gonna bother you. A few minutes later, I look out. He's dapping up the police officers. They're laughing. They're chuckling. I'm like, what the hell is going on? So they send him off. The police officers come back to my store. They're like, yeah, he's just here for his last check. First of all, that's not how that works. Second, he never even said that that's what he wanted. He's lying. I said he threatened me multiple times. That is not why he's here. And they're like, well, why don't you just give him his money and he'll be on his way? I was like, that's not how it works. He'll get paid on payday, or on Monday, we'll figure out a way to pay him beforehand if we need to. But as of right now, he's not getting paid. He hasn't even been fired yet. So the police tell him that, whatever. They walk away. The police walk him away. So we're continuing to close the store because when you work a big retail store like that, it takes like an hour to like clean up the store. So now it's time for us to actually leave. It's like 10 o'clock at this point. I look out. Our store was like right in front of the escalators, and it was kind of like a ledge. He's standing on the opposite side of the ledge, staring in, just leaning over, like looking at me. He had also changed his clothes. I forgot to mention that when I said he was hiding in the store. He was dressed in all black, hiding in the corner. One of my associates was like, oh my God, he changed his clothes to all black because when you curb stomp someone, you can't see the red on your clothes. Why would you say something like that to me? So again, I'm terrified. I don't know what this man is going to do to me. He's like having a psychotic break. I end up leaving and he doesn't follow us, whatever. I think the whole situation is behind us. Thought that was the end of it, but we just happened to Google him. Y'all, why did we find out he was a felon? On multiple occasions, he had gotten arrested for knowingly infecting people with AIDS. Next week, I'm in the parking garage. Again, I feel a presence. I feel someone staring at me. I feel danger. I look up. He's like a few cars over staring at me. Mind y'all, he cannot drive. He doesn't have a license. He doesn't have a car. What are you doing in the parking garage? I got in that car and floored it. Over the next few weeks after that, I would see him on the street. I would be at work and we'd be all talking, and then I would just feel his presence, and I would turn around and he'd be standing right behind me like, hi Lauren. That happened like multiple times, to the point that I started walking around with a blade. I had gotten like bear spray. Like, I was looking over my shoulder at all times. It caused me so much anxiety. Tried to involve the police. They were no help at all. For some reason, like, I was not able to get a restraining order. So I just filled out like hella police reports. And when I tell y'all, like, that was probably one of the most stressed out times of my life. I was so stressed. Like, I just didn't even know what he was gonna do to me. Honestly, the unknown of what he wanted to do to me was the scariest part of the situation. All my coworkers were insanely supportive. Like, it was craziness. And one of my coworkers was actually my friend from high school, and he had always asked about Greg on the schedule because Greg's real name is actually pretty unique. So he would be like, I know that name, but I don't know where I know that name from. So I'm telling my friend like what happened, and he's like, wait, I do know him. So he tells me he's usually like at the gay bars, lurking in the corners, always trying to go home with people. He never wanted to bring anybody back to his place. He was always trying to go home with people. And so my friend ended up bringing him home with him. They were about to like hook up, but he started getting like weirdly aggressive. So my friend kicked him out and he never saw him again. Crazy. The last part of this is him showing up at my house. So come back for part 3. Part 3, story time of when I got stalked. I left off finding out all these things about Greg, how he's a felon, how he tried to knowingly infect people with lifelong diseases. He is known to like be weird and creepy at the bars. Also figure out that he's homeless at this point. So all throughout this situation, he would call me from like texting apps and like fake numbers and stuff. But one specific night, he calls me really late and he's like, look outside. So I look outside my window, nobody's out there. A few minutes later, he sends me a picture of the front of our house. And I lived in my parents' house at the time. So I'm like, I don't know what to do at this point because I didn't really want to call the police and like cause a ruckus because my parents would be mad, especially if he wasn't actually gonna do anything. But then on the other hand, I was just like, what if he like burns the house down? So I was very nervous, to say the least. At this point, I call my ex, who was my ex at this time, but he would like drop anything for me. And the easiest way to describe him is that he's just not a safe person to be around for the things that he was into. But it was safe for me, but it wasn't safe for anybody in his way. So I end up calling my ex comes and picks me up, and we're just like arguing back and forth with Greg over the phone. And my ex is like, well, let's just meet up somewhere and just squash this. Ex is like 6'7", large man, very intimidating. So I'm assuming his goal was just to intimidate him, basically. Greg is like, okay, let's meet at this specific gas station. We're on our way to the gas station. They're still arguing back and forth. My ex unfortunately calls him a slur that I don't agree with, but unfortunately he said it in that moment. So when we get to the gas station, there's police everywhere. Greg is basically like, yeah, come to this gas station and I'm gonna tell them how you have threatened me and hate crimed me. I don't know how he knew, how he figured it out. I mean, I guess that's just what stalkers do. He knew my ex had a warrant out for his arrest and just knew like my ex was not a friend of the law. So of course, when we seen all those police, my ex is booking it to turn around. Even though we didn't actually confront him that night, that was kind of like the last major thing that he did to me. I did come across him a couple of times. There was one time I walked past him when he was actually sleeping on the street and I didn't realize it was him, and I went to go give him some money and he looked up and I got scared and literally took off running. And he still would kind of pop up at my job. The only thing that actually stopped it is because after a couple months, I had gotten a new job on the other side of town. And because he didn't have a car, and he probably just didn't even know where I worked at that point, he could not pop up on me at work. I haven't seen him in years. Praise, but that is still something. Like, I still look over my shoulders. I still be looking in my back seat to make sure nobody's back there. Like, I do not play about somebody following me around. I will literally call somebody out if I feel like they're following me around, and it's a lot. But that's the end of the story. Let me know if you guys want like part 4, part 3.5 of when I found out that my best friend was actually texting him the whole time.